will be my 400th upload to YouTube, I thought you'd like to meet my 1927 Alvis 1250. This is my oldest car, and it's probably my most favourite. So let's have a walk around, a drive, and see what the car's like.
This car has spells of being in modern daily use. It features a 2+2 seating arrangement, which is quite unusual. The back seats are a little bit tight, and then a lockable boot area at the rear. The car left the factory and was sent to Cross and Ellis coach builders for the bodywork. When I started work on the car, my father had completely rebuilt the back end, putting new ash framework into all the bodywork and making new rear wings. However, the front valances and the front wings were missing, whilst the original bonnet and bonnet scuttle had been repaired. The front wings were a fortunate find through the register, coming from another 1927 Cross and Ellis car that was about to receive an Australian body. I had to modify the ends so that it would join here the correct body line, and I had to repair the end of the wings, which were a little bit rotten. However, they suit the car well and look very similar to the originals from the period photographs that I have. This is the earliest known photograph I have of my car, taken in around 1934, before the rear body had been converted. You can see the wind-up windows as they are today, along with the hood, but the hood clearly only goes round the front section of the bodywork, and there is a step here to get into the dicky seat. On the rear you'll see a motorbike, and that's because my owner was a works driver for Levis motorcycles in Birmingham. Also, you'll notice the wheels are open hub. However, the headlamps are shiny and obviously recently chromed. The chroming was done in 1934, and soon after the bodywork was converted, as you can see here. The rear of the body was changed so that the red setters of the owner could have his dogs inside rather than in the dicky seat. Here you can see the rear screens, which my car still currently has, but you can also see the incorrect front wings and the front valance and the headlamp which has been put on the front to update the car. This is very similar to how my father bought the car in 1960. You can see the front wings are still the same, and the bodywork is still very much the same as it was in 1948. However, after losing a little end bolt, he decided on a complete restoration and stripped the body off and started to repair and repaint the chassis completely. The body turned out to be a bit of a nightmare, with the woodwork really quite rotten. However, with an archaic bit of asbestos pipe and his mother's best kitchen kettles, he developed a steamer, bent the arches, and replaced nearly all the woodwork in the rear body shell, even painting it with a reputed 27 coats of cellulose paint. Certainly it looked rather smart in this 1967 photograph, which is when work stopped on the car. It then, for various reasons, sat in our garage, and I took these pictures as a small lad in the mid-80s of the car, covered up, almost forgotten. Finally, I was allowed to move it and start work, seen here in 2002, the interior, and then rolled outside for its first wash in nearly 40 years. This was the first time I'd ever seen it with the hood down. A friend of mine in the register took me under his wing and helped me rebuild the engine. We took particular care to test the little ends with crack tester, as that had been a major problem for my father. But unfortunately this was due to be a major problem for me a long time down the line. But the engine was built up on Monday evenings over a period of weeks and reinstalled back in the car, finally being fired up in 2002. Having returned to the road in 2007, and with rebuilt interior, my young family started to enjoy the car. The front seats are probably from a 30s Austin or something similar, and are not original. The bench seat likewise I have fabricated, but the original bench seat went to another vehicle, so is not lost. The door still retains the vertical wind-up windows which operate from a chain, and the rear section has some screens that plug into these holes, which are part of the 1930s conversion. The dashboard is my father's creation, but it does feature all the original gauges as well as one or two extras. The temperature gauge actually has a false bezel and looks more like a World War II aircraft temperature gauge when you have it separate, and it has my father's handwritten scale on it in Fahrenheit, a nice lasting memento. The petrol gauge is vacuum operated from the rear tank, which was fitted from a 1929 Silver Eagle. The clock and the speedo are both original Alvis items, as is the oil pressure gauge and the ammeter. The car build sheet even stipulates that it has 2 dash lamps, and the car still has these on the dashboard. Remarkable survivors. And then my father added this ignition pod, which is actually a Rolls-Royce unit, but makes the car rather neat and usable. To hand start the car, which isn't strictly necessary as it does have an internal foot operated starter button, you need to open the bonnet, and underneath you have the auto vac, needing to pull the petrol tap out, which is situated under the auto vac. That allows petrol down the pipe to the carburetors. Inside the car you need to turn the magneto on, or rather stop it being earthed. If the car is cold, you may need to pull the choke out here, and on the steering column you may need to retard the ignition. Usually retarding helps it to start, and if it's cold you even might need to turn the throttle and open that up. You then need to get this rather heavy duty looking starting handle. You put the starting handle through the hole in the front chassis and make sure that it locates with the crank. When holding the starting handle, you mustn't put your hand around that with your thumb around the starting handle, because if this kicks back, it can be so violent it can break or damage your thumb. Instead, your thumb should always be the same side as your fingers around the handle when you push down. So you're going to push down on the handle like that to make the engine go round. Starting it, you start with the top of the throat so you can push round. Lowering the hood can be done on your own relatively easily and allows the car to look quite pretty as a drop top. You do have to fold the hood quite carefully, and when the material goes behind, you have to tuck it back under the hoop of the hood so that it doesn't cut it. You can see it's quite an easy task. It can actually be done from the driver's seat in a rush. Let's go. The driver has 3 pedals. The right hand pedal is the brake, the centre pedal is the accelerator, and the left hand pedal is the clutch. Down on the right hand side of the driver's knee there is a handbrake and a gear selector, 4 forward gears and 1 reverse. The box is a crash box, which means there's no synchromesh, so you need to push the clutch down and wait for all the gears to go silent and stationary. Then you can select a gear, in this case first. You then take the handbrake off, and we're on a flat surface so we haven't rolled away. You then lift the clutch gently and the car will move away. The car corners quite nicely. The large wheel makes up for the lack of power steering, and it's quite precise. You can lose the back end if you go a bit too quick, but most of the time it's remarkably sure-footed. The gear changes can make acceleration a little bit laboured, but that's my lack of experience. The brakes work well, the car travels reasonably fast, much faster than other road users often realise for what is effectively a 100-year-old car. You'll notice the gentleman in front pulls out with old car syndrome, and I have to slow significantly. It's always a shame, but I was bowling along nicely. So let's have a closer look at the engine whilst it's running. It's an inline 4-cylinder overhead cam engine. On my car there is a dynamo which runs the magneto directly off the back of the dynamo. The flywheel is open and runs a short cardan shaft to the gearbox immediately behind. You'll notice at the front there is the 2 water pipes. The water goes into the head here, goes all the way along the head. There is then at the back of the head a transfer port which sends the water into the block, and then the water comes back through the block and into the radiator. The radiator is a full honeycomb, dictated by the honeycomb appearance of the fins, which makes it extremely expensive to replace. And this was chromed in 1934, should have originally been nickeled, but it wears the Alvis triangle and of course the hair. The hair is the symbol of the vintage 1250, and the early ones had fat paws and the later ones had thinner paws. So mine, being a 27 car, has got a pair of fat paws on its mascot. The driver's side of the engine really deals with the fuel. This car is fitted with an autovac which allows it to have a rear tank, and then it is fitted with a pair of bronze bodied SU carburetors, which again are slightly post-vintage but were all I had. Further down there is quite a chunky starter motor, and that runs directly onto the open flywheel, and then this is the steering box. You have various levers and controls here. This is the throttle control, and a bit further down here you have the advance and retard lever. When you operate that, it moves the magneto. I've had to have a stainless steel exhaust manifold because the original one cracked and broke, and I've also made my own inlet manifold with this balancing pipe. This is the vacuum, and the autovac is run off vacuum, so the vacuum sucks fuel into this top chamber, and when it's full it dumps it in the lower chamber. The gearbox is connected by this cardan shaft, and here you have what's known as a clutch brake. So when the clutch is pressed, this actually will operate onto this, effectively this brake disc, but it's a cardan shaft disc, and it helps slow the input shaft down, making gear changes a little bit quicker. The gearbox itself is almost directly under the driver's feet, but the right hand gate change comes off and sits by the driver's ankles. The drive from the gearbox goes down this main prop shaft to a large rear axle with the differential seen here, and then immediately behind that there is The 12-gallon, yes, 12-gallon petrol tank. We hope you've enjoyed our little walk round and look at our vintage Alvis. We've certainly enjoyed driving it. It brings a lot of pleasure and fun to be seen and to drive and to learn. If you've liked what you're seeing, please like and subscribe.